Hello, everyone. So my name is Allison Lever. I'm a second-year MPA student at Dalhousie, and I'm excited to introduce our panelist for the School of Public Administration alumni panel today. So before we begin the panel, I just want to acknowledge that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. So our panelists for today are, first we have James MacKinnon, the Interim Chief Operating Officer at the Atlantic First Nations Water Authority, Karan Riarh, Committee Clerk at the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia, and Salman Dostmohammed, Advisor at Finance Canada. So I'm going to open it up for our panelists so that they can tell us a bit more about their journey as Dalhousie MPA graduates and where they are today. So Salman, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Allison. So I graduated from the Dalhousie MPA program back in 2017. Very fond memories of that. And pretty soon after graduation, I landed a position with the Department of Canadian Heritage in the Deputy Minister's office, where I worked to stand up a consultancy type team to advise the deputy of the department's progress on innovation and experimentation. And then from there, I went to work for Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada for a short assignment where I led a policy review of the department's grants and contributions programs. And there were a mix of different programs at the department, along with the Indigenous Services Canada department as well, related to capacity building for Indigenous groups. And so I was exploring the overlaps between programs and issues with eligibility as part of that, and did an analysis and understanding of the gaps, and interviewed key program officials during my time in that program, and provided a long, comprehensive policy document with policy options for decision makers to be able to act based with the recommendations on how to tackle the problem. And then from there, I worked with the Treasury Board Secretariat as a strategic advisor, where I provided integrated advice and recommendations to the Chief Information Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and other senior officials on all kinds of stuff related to digital change. And then after that, finally where I am now, work as an analyst for the Department of Finance, where I provide advice to the Minister of Finance on the budget process.
Awesome. So Karan, we could go on to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Karan Riarh. I'm joining you from Victoria today, which is located on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. So I grew up on the West Coast and did my undergrad at the University of British Columbia in Political Science and European Studies. Finished that in 2009 and worked for a couple of years working in nonprofits before I started my MPA in 2011 and graduated in 2013. Following my MPA, I worked for a nonprofit local government organization in Yellowknife, where I was primarily supporting senior administrative officers in the I think there's still 33 communities up in the NWT with things like capacity building and promoting careers in local government in the NWT. After some time there, I shifted over to Edmonton and worked for the Ministry of Health as a policy analyst in the continuing care branch, so doing a lot of legislative and policy work there. By then, I was very much missing my home of BC and shifted my way back and wound up here at the Legislative Assembly of BC, where I've been for the last 5.5 years in the Parliamentary Committee's office. I came in as a committee researcher, and as Allison mentioned, I'm now a committee clerk, so I've progressively taken on more senior responsibilities and roles over the last few years. Our primary focus here is to support all-party parliamentary committees here at the Legislative Assembly. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. And we can go to you, James.
Sure, and thank you, Allison, and thank you everyone for having me today. And I will say before I get into it, apologize for the noise if there is any. I'm in kind of a public place right now to do this panel. So my story is a little bit different than my other fellow panelists. I did my MPA on a part-time basis, and I'd already started my career before that. So my work history is really the history of the Atlantic First Nations Water Authority. I started after my undergraduate degree was finished at Dalhousie. I did it in both chemistry and social anthropology at an organization called Atlantic Policy Congress First Nations Chiefs Secretariat. There, the Water Authority was contemplated as a project. So the Chiefs of Atlantic Canada directed the APC, as it's called, to explore a regional utility for water and wastewater operations, an organization that would own and operate the water systems in participating First Nations communities. So as an employee of APC, I led several studies on the asset condition, or the condition of water, wastewater assets in communities, operations and maintenance, funding analysis, as well as the building of a corporate structure. So when the Water Authority when it became time to move from a project to a growing concern utility, I came right along with the authority and became its first employee as the Interim Chief Operating Officer. All the while, I was completing my Master's of Public Administration at Dal on a part-time basis. So I completed my degree between September 2016 to September 2020. But since that time, when I was completing it, I guess the big change with the authority that I'll mention is we signed a framework agreement last summer that aims to transfer the ministerial responsibility for water and wastewater services from Canada to the Atlantic First Nations Water Authority. So that was last summer, and since then we've been going at a fast pace to complete that service delivery transfer and be an up and running utility. Thank you.
Awesome. This looks like it's going to be a really great panel that we have today. So I'll just kind of get into the swing of it and start asking some questions for you guys. So the first one I'll ask, and I'll start with you, Karan. Why did you guys decide to complete your MPAs?
So after I finished my undergrad, I started working right away, and I was mostly working in some nonprofits and trying to figure out what I actually wanted to do with respect to my career. And I actually had a really great mentor, a former prof of mine, who, threw around the idea of looking into things like policy work. And at that time as well, the job market was a little bit more tough. So I was looking for a way to kind of get a leg up of entering the public service. And the Dal MPA was one of the ones that came up, and I applied and got in. And it was a great program, and it was a great 2 years that I spent in Halifax.
Awesome. Salman?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I knew I always wanted to work to influence government policy and drive social change from within. I knew that even before deciding to do an MPA. I worked in the private sector for a number of years as a business consultant and an account manager. And during that time, I was interacting with government on the private sector side. And I was fascinated with policymaking and how policies get created, because I was the one advising my clients of how to comply with the policies. And my clients would always say things like, oh, well, that's a stupid policy. Why did they do that? It's not totally applicable in what we're doing. And I agreed with them. I said, yeah, that totally doesn't make any sense. I have no idea why they would have even done that. And so that was one of the motivations in wanting to jump over to the other side and work in government. And the MPA program was a good stepping stone to give me the base foundations that I would need to do that. And so, as part of this work, I would say that the program at Dal it had a long history. It had all the requisite training that I felt that I would need as a policy practitioner to be successful as a policy professional in government. And so that's the story of why I decided to do the MPA degree.
Great. And James?
Thank you. I chose to do the MPA. I think I was maybe 3 or 4 years into my career, and I was looking to broaden my skills. I knew, I was working with government regularly. I was working with First Nations communities regularly, but I think there was some gaps in my understanding and gaps in my skills that I needed to fill. I knew this was the route that I wanted to take for my career. And so an undergraduate degree in chemistry and social anthropology doesn't directly prepare you for work in the public sector, but I think primarily it was just to improve as an employee in a field that I wanted to pursue, and I'd say it did that.
Great. So next question I have, so can you tell me a bit about your internship experience and how it prepares you for future jobs? So James, I'll start with you. I know you did it part-time. So if you want to talk, I'm assuming you didn't do the internship.
I didn't know. Yeah.
So if you want to talk maybe about your experience being a part-time student or maybe working while part-time, that kind of thing, or anything you want to share on that front.
Sure. No, it's really no problem. And it's a great question because it is a different experience as a part-time student versus a full-time student. So I think what being a part-time student taught me is that I had to be efficient with my time, both at work and with my studies. So I knew in the evening there was only so much time to complete my studies because either there was a deliverable for work to complete the next day or simply there wouldn't be time during the day to complete. So above the broad skills that the MPA had taught me, it's really that ability to be efficient and effective with my time and manage it effectively to get what I need to get done. But it was a challenge, I will say, to work full time and complete. So I did about 2 courses a semester, every semester except for the summers for 4 years, where the last year was 2 for 3 straight semesters. But it was a challenge, but it's one semester at a time, and thankfully I was successful.
Awesome. Karan, go on to you. So just your internship experience, I guess.
Yeah, so I ended up doing my internship with the Nova Scotia Department of Labor and Advanced Education. And it was such a great experience that I was able to continue working very part-time during my second year of the MPA as well. I had a really fantastic internship experience. I went into it trying to gain as much from it as I can, trying to sign up for as many assignments as I could, trying to get as much coaching as I could. And I ended up working largely on corporate policies and doing a bit of a project on internal communication for the branch, as well as some other policy work. And what I got the most out of was the relationship I had with my supervisor and the regular coaching and the feedback that I got on my writing and my communication style and the way that I was presenting information, because there's schoolwork and there's school papers and there's school presentations. But when you need to translate that into a work environment for decision makers or for managers, and you need to articulate it more clearly and efficiently, that's a slightly different skill set than what you might start with in the program itself. So I took a lot away just from having those opportunities and, again, getting some really great coaching and mentorship out of the people that I was working with. And I think that set me up really well for when I then moved into post-MPA, looking for actual jobs.
Yeah, it's great. I could definitely even see that. So I did my internship this summer at a COA, and I've stayed on part-time now. And I feel like one of the things that was kind of a learning curve was depends on who you're writing for, kind of how you should be preparing something. Some people like a lot of words. Some people like it really brief. So you really kind of have to learn to roll with it and figure out who you're writing for and who your audience is. So that's definitely a really interesting experience with the internship. Salman?
Yeah, so I did my internship with the Privy Council office in the Legislation and House Planning Secretariat. And at a broad level, it was an eye-opening experience because it instilled in me the respect and admiration for our democracy. Now, this was all pre-pandemic, but every day when I came into work, I would see members of parliament and senators carrying out their legislative duties in the House and the Senate. And I had some amazing opportunities while I was there. So, for example, I was able to serve as a note taker in the actual cabinet room with ministers there. And I was producing minutes and records of decision. And I saw ministers totally frank and honest with each other across the table. And in the MPA program, I remember I read about the Parliamentary Convention on Cabinet Confidence and Collective Responsibility. But here I was witnessing it for myself. So it was absolutely fantastic and something I'll never forget in my time in that co-op opportunity. And there's been other great opportunities that stemmed from that experience as well. Now, in terms of preparing me for postgraduate jobs, I would say that the experience has probably made me more attuned to the job of ministers. And so in every government department I've been in since then, I'm constantly thinking about the minister I'm serving and having that empathy for them in their job, ensuring the thoroughness and completeness of my advice that I send up to them as well. And so that's my internship experience in a nutshell and how it's impacted me.
Great. So next question I have. So looking back, is there something you wish you had done or not done or maybe done differently during your MPA? So that could have been more working or more networking, getting involved more, focusing more on a certain course or skill. Salman, we can start with you.
Sure. I guess maybe I'd start by saying maybe I could have given my professors a little bit less of a hard time. Um, but like looking back now, where I'm more senior in my career, I wish I would have picked up French sooner. And this is embarrassing for me to admit, considering when I was in the MPA program, I also did an academic exchange to Sciences Po in France. But like with the other research and voluntary work that I was doing, learning French kind of took a bit of a backseat at the time. So that's what I'd say. But if I could spin that question a little bit, I would say, looking back, I wish that I had more opportunity to collaborate with others with the diverse talent that's there in the MPA program. And I don't know if this is the case today as it was in my time, but when I remember, there was this tendency amongst folks in classes to just work amongst their friends for like group assignments and things like that. And so I tried to engage others and break through that, but it was tough. People had their preferences and went with that. So working with the diversity of talented people in the program is something I wish there was more opportunity to do. And I would encourage folks to do the same when they're working on various group projects and things like that, because when you're working for the public service, you can't choose your team, at least not right away. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I found since that we've been a lot online. So last year, my first year was all online. Right now, I'm in a bit of a mix, but I do find that sometimes these online tools that we now have kind of have opened the door for that kind of collaboration. Like these people who I originally probably wouldn't have gone to know as well or just communicated with as much, they're now kind of at the touch of my fingers, and I can kind of work with them a little bit more than I probably would before. So I think that's definitely almost a bit, having Teams and having all these different devices and stuff, it just made it better on that front, I'd say. So James, we could go on to you.
Sure, thanks. This was I gave this one some thought. It was a difficult question for me to answer. But what I will say is that likely I would have liked to do the program full time. I'll say when I was on campus, I came during the day for class and I met with my groups to work. But my time for school was my time for school, and I miss really connecting with the cohort that I started with or subsequent cohorts. So that networking piece. Now, it was nice doing it part-time. I got to know 3 cohorts instead of say 1 or 2. But I think that was a piece that, I was there to do it and then I left. And then I went back to my job and I had other focuses and other responsibilities. So that was probably the biggest one that I would change. So I'm slightly envious of those who got to do it full time. The other piece is that being a full-time employee or worker doing the MPA, I sort of geared my studies or my course choices in my second year to things that would support what I was already doing. And maybe I could have taken more of an opportunity to broaden my horizons with some of the wonderful courses you can take within the School of Public Administration or outside of the school. I know that some other ones are accepted, but I chose to support kind of and reinforce the skills that I needed for the job that I was currently doing.
Great. And Karan?
So I don't think there's anything I actually would have done differently. I think it was definitely a challenging couple of years. And in the moment, there were times where, things were very stressful and there was a lot of work to do. But what I did find really beneficial was the relationships, and I still find very beneficial, is the relationships I built with my classmates over those last 2 years, because the people that came into the program when I was there, and I'm assuming they do every year, come from so many different experiences, so many different walks of life, so much different expertise in different policy areas and interests. And this program then just fans us all out across the country. And in addition to the great friendships that I've built that are very much a huge part of my life right now, every place I've been, somebody from a DAL program, somebody from the DAL MPA is bound to be there as well. I remember particularly in Edmonton, there was a big group of us from my graduating class who were actually all working for the government of Alberta at the same time. And so the relationships that I built with my classmates automatically creates a built-in network for you across the country, across different levels of government, across different types of organizations. And those relationships are really beneficial for understanding what kind of work is happening in different places in government, what areas might be interesting to work in. And then sometimes you show up in a meeting together and it's really exciting to have that connection. So I would really, really encourage and emphasize that. And I also just wanted to pick up a little bit on James's point about the types of classes and stuff you can take. At the time that I completed my MPA, I believe the program was working on a more fulsome professional development program to kind of supplement the core courses that you would be taking over the 2 years. So I didn't get to take advantage of that because it was just in development. But I did end up subsequently taking a little bit more training in things like performance measurement and strategic planning. And I think some of those like softer corporate type skills and programs, if they're available to you, they can seem a little scary, and you're so focused on your regular classes that it might be something that you don't necessarily put as much importance on. But to the degree that you're able to leverage that during your time at Dal, if it's available to you, I would also very much encourage that, because those lenses and those skills come in really handy, especially in the world that we live in right now that is just changing so much all the time.
Great, yeah. So next question, what skills or knowledge did you learn throughout the MPA that you found most useful now in your career? So I may have touched on that a little bit with that last question, but if we want to expand a little bit, James, we could start with you.
Sure. I think what I appreciated the most was the broad set of skills that I learned maybe in the first year, right? Like I came out of the first year for me, it was the first two, but for full-time students, it would be your first year. I came out with how to read a balance sheet better, appreciation for the policy cycle, organizational design, those sorts of things. And I found as I did each course, I became a better employee, and my understanding grew. So I'm very appreciative of that broad base. And then I guess for years 3 and 4 for me, as I got specialized in some of the courses I took, I was appreciative for that type of information as well. So just the broad skills, I guess.
Great. Salman?
Yeah, I'd say a key skill that the MPA program helps you learn is analytical thinking. I think this is a competency that is highly valued within the public service, no matter where you go. Almost any job you see will look for evidence of analytical thinking or something to that effect. And the good news for people that are watching this is that the MPA program is abundant in opportunities to learn and hone that skill. So whether that is thinking through the impacts of a policy from all angles, if you're working on a policy memo for your public policy class, or trying to understand what statistical method is the most appropriate to use in a given situation, or in your ethics class, if you're facing an ethical dilemma or a problem in the workplace and you need to think through and you're forced to react or act in that situation, what you're going to do. There's so many situations where you could be asked, and you would have to bring upon that analytical thinking, and you see that in jobs too, right? Like in posters, you will see where they'll ask you things like the ability to identify major stakeholders, or you might be asked to identify or link government priorities to a given situation of some kind or another. Like those are common things that you could be asked in an interview or in a job application. And so it's very valuable, the kinds of skills you learn in the MPA program, that you can apply that kind of analytical lens to your work and to the kinds of applications you work on when you're seeking a position externally.
Great. Karan?
So I won't repeat what James and Salman said and just mention that I do agree with what they said. But I will also add that I think teamwork was really huge. From what I remember from the program, almost everything we did was a group project, or there was some element of a group project related. And pretty much every place I've worked since I graduated from Dal, there's very, very, very few things that I do on my own. Even if you're responsible for a particular part of a project on your own, it's still going to be passed on to someone else that needs to look at it. So much of my work, especially right now, is very much team-based, and being able to work with other people and work with different personalities, to be able to time manage and assign things appropriately and hold each other accountable, I think is really, really important. And you learn a lot about that through the program. I'd also throw in communication. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier as well. And then I think the other thing that was really beneficial is flexibility and adaptability. the program is really demanding. You have to learn to manage your time. You have a lot of different assignments, a lot of different skills that you're learning, and you get to set this really great foundation of figuring out how to navigate all of that and how to be adaptable, whether it's the course or whether it's the people that you're working with or whatever else. So you get this really great overall strong foundation of skills that sets you up at a personal and relationship building level to enter the workforce.
Great. And I'll kind of combine questions here for the sake of time. So I'd love to hear a bit about your experiences finding a job after graduation. I know even for me, I'm in my second year, it's on my mind. And then also, so we touched on a little bit, or all of you touched on it a bit in your introductions, but your career trajectory since that job to where you are now. So how you've moved around, where you've moved around to, just a bit of detail on that, and what role networking has played in that. Salman, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I'd say my experience was quite good. Like, it didn't take me long to find a job after graduation. I remember during my time in the MPA program, like, I sought to leverage every opportunity I had to make an impact. So I was presenting research papers at like ACPA conferences, volunteering with IPAC Nova Scotia and other community organizations, representing student perspective at the AMAN's board meetings, also participated in the IPAC case competition, publishing research for a think tank. And like, there were so many things that I was doing beyond just the coursework. And, word kind of just spread, like the good work I was doing and working great in teams. Like, people remembered the kinds of work that I did, the presentations that I held and whatnot. And so when I graduated, I had all kinds of opportunities opening up, and that helped me be able to leverage that and jump into a move right away after graduating. And I'd say, like, in terms of networking, I'd say, yeah, it's absolutely a very useful exercise. You can network in so many ways. Like, you can set up some time with the manager of a unit that you think would be an interesting place to work for. Managers are constantly looking, and they're on the hunt for great talent. So they want to speak to you. Like, there's no reason why they wouldn't want to, unless they're super busy. And in that case, they'll let you know, or you can reach out to some other folks as well. So, and another thing to keep in mind too is that, at the time when you're talking to a particular manager, there may not be an opportunity, and that's fine, because guess what? In 6 months, if they move to another department, they might be, hiring all kinds of people. And so, the fact that you've got that relationship established where you can reach out to them, is invaluable. And I think networking is a very key. It plays a very, very key role in doing that. And there's so many other ways that I can't even talk about here that you can do that. Like, for example, once you're in a job, you can set up coffee chats once every week with a different person, just learning about the kinds of work they do and what's their drive, what's their passion in their work. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be vertical. You could be having horizontal type conversations with colleagues in other groups. And that's another way to get your name across too, because they might reach out to you. And I've had that happen where they'll say, send me, do you have someone looking for an opportunity at this and this level? Please send me their resume or something like that. That happens all the time. And so there's so many opportunities, and networking is a very key way that you should be leveraging to get those opportunities.
Awesome. Karan?
So when I graduated, the job market for entering any public service was a little bit challenging. And also at that time, I actually, as soon as I finished the MPA, moved back to Vancouver, which is where I'm from, in the hopes of being able to find a job and stay in Vancouver. And a couple of months passed and that wasn't happening. And so I kind of changed tacks and decided to, just see what's out there, see where I can get my leg in the door, see what kind of opportunities are available, and wound up in Yellowknife and took a short-term contract there. And that was a really great experience. And I learned so much, not just about in terms of skills development, but I got to learn and experience a whole other different part of the country, which gave me this other perspective and experience and lens that I continue to bring to a lot of my work. And so from that point on, I've kind of taken the approach of being really open to any opportunity that might come forward, and not prejudging those opportunities and just kind of seeing where things take me. Because I didn't come into the MPA program with wanting to work for a specific level of government or for a specific policy area. And in fact, I remember when we were all getting ready to apply for our internships, one of the biggest pieces of advice that we got was all internships will have a great opportunity for you. Don't necessarily get stuck on a particular policy area because you're still going to learn those skills, and just kind of be open to those opportunities. And so that's what I did. And then I wound up in Alberta and did the policy work in community care, which I knew nothing about going into it, but I had a great team that I was a part of, an amazing manager. I got to do some really great projects, and I continued to develop my skills and experience. And then I was able to take that and eventually come back to BC and work at the Legislative Assembly, which for me is actually quite a dream come true in terms of getting to support our democratic institution in this province. And so everything for me is always I'd like to look at everything as an opportunity, and where can I build some skills, and where can life take me. And I mean, I'm fortunate that I have that flexibility in my life as well, where I didn't have to worry about a family and uprooting them or anything like that. I could kind of roam around and see where I found my home. But taking that type of approach was always really helpful. And then once I got into all of those organizations, spent a lot of time getting to know people and getting to know people in different departments and getting to know different areas, and just kind of building those relationships within the organization as well, because those also come in handy for work. So that's kind of my general journey and approach to my career, and I'm pretty happy where I am right now.
That's awesome. I think one of the things, like, kind of coming out of the MPA in a few months, that's really exciting, is that there's the government, like a career in the government means so much. Like, it's so exciting. There's so many different things I could do and areas of policy that I could learn. Like, I just can't see it ended up being a boring life. So that's great. James?
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't have trouble finding a job after graduation. I maintained my career, which is great. But I'll focus more on the networking piece. So I'm going to try to give some practical examples as best I can, because I think coming through the not-for-profit sector gave me some unique opportunities to network and work with individuals that I may not have had the opportunity to work with otherwise. So I was lucky enough to become a director of a department in the Atlantic Policy Congress of First Nations Chiefs quite quickly. So leading projects on behalf of the APC, I was able to work closely with individuals from engineering firms, public utilities, and financial firms, that sort of thing. So I got to experience a broad range of professionals working and build my network that way. But also with a position like that, I was lucky enough to be appointed by the Regional Chief of Nova Scotia Newfoundland as a technical representative on a committee with the Assembly of First Nations. It's called the Chiefs Committee on Housing and Infrastructure. So being part of that committee allowed me to meet colleagues across the country, both working in tribal councils or communities, First Nations communities in all regions, but also with headquarters staff within the federal government, usually from Indigenous Services Canada or CMHC. But I was able to grow my network that way, which was very beneficial to me. One, to grow as a professional, but also, as projects develop and things change, you need to have a network to rely on to complete the work you need to complete. So those, particularly the ones with the Assembly of First Nations, has led to some really interesting projects, particularly now working on kind of the repeal and replacement of the Safe Drinking Water for First Nations Act. I think is a pretty interesting piece. But practically for the Atlantic First Nations Water Authority, where I now work, building that network and close working relationship with individuals and professionals actually led to us recruiting our CEO, or our interim CEO. We're both interim now, but for during our transition to full operations, I approached our board of directors with an individual I've built a relationship with, and they agreed to bring him on. So through my network and through my working relationships, it was quite beneficial for the organizations that I've worked and for myself.
Awesome. So we're at the end of the panel now. So I just want to open the floor. Is there anything the three of you would like to add, or any closing words? Karan, could start with you.
Sure. I guess I would kind of maybe reiterate and reinforce what I think I've kind of already said so far in the panel today, and that's just really be open to the opportunities that might come your way. you never know where it might lead you. You never know what you're going to learn. Even something that doesn't necessarily work out the way that you were hoping it would is something that you can still learn from. You don't necessarily know who you're going to meet and what skills you're going to learn and what perspectives you're going to gain. So the more flexible and adaptable that I think you can be will serve you really well in your career. And I know it served me really well. And again, I think I said earlier, the world is changing so quickly that being that adaptable, flexible person will position you really, really well to be successful.
James?
Just to build on that, I think you never know. Take the opportunities you can, because you never know what you're going to like. You'd be surprised what you're interested in if you start to kind of pull the thread on the sweater, so to speak, and start to really get into a topic as you can. With an MPA, you don't know the types of topics that are really going to interest you. I know, looking back, when I was in my undergrad, for example, I was what I'm working on now necessarily on my radar, and to be honest, no, it wasn't. But I took a chance with an organization, and it turned out to be something I was incredibly passionate about, and I'm so thankful I took that chance. And doing my MPA only enhanced my ability to pursue those passions. So just to add on what was said previously, you never know what you're going to like.
Great. Salman?
Yeah, I have a couple. I guess the first one would be fearless about your career. Get involved in as many different things as possible to demonstrate your passion for public service. The work of government at all levels of the public, is essentially to serve. And so there's so many ways to do that. And if you haven't been as involved, you can make the change starting today. There's nothing preventing you from doing so. And then another thing is, embody the values of the public service. The values can shift depending on what order or what level of government you're talking about, but they're relatively, consistent with each other. And, embody those values in every job with you and every colleague you meet. Remember what your role is: to support the government's agenda in improving the quality of life for Canadians. So think about that in every briefing note you write, in every colleague you speak to, in every meeting you attend. Whatever it is, always keep that in the back of your mind. Remember who you are here to serve. And I'll leave it at that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of your time and your words today. I had a wonderful time speaking with all of you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.